We have economics, AS level. So we start with chapter 1, economics as a social science. Start. The scientific method. There are many sciences covering a wide field of knowledge. What links them all is a particular method of work or inquiry called a scientific method. The scientific method at its most basic is relatively easy to understand. A scientist postulates that is put forward a theory or model. The scientist put forward a hypothesis that is capable of being disproved. Then they gather the evidence to either support the theory or refute it. Scientific method. So science is there. Science is just about gathering information, gathering evidence that they have to support or oppose. That is scientific method. So observation of a space gives evidence to support the theory that the Earth travels around the Sun. However, data refutes the idea that the Earth travels around the Sun. They will gather evidence through controlled experiments. From this, they will then accept, modify, or refute the theory. So, for scientists, science is not like economics. For science, it's about gathering evidence, coming up with hypotheses. This hypothesis is just an idea that they have to back up with some information, which we have to say yes or no to. So if you are saying yes to it, that means it is approved. It has proven truth to be truth. Then it becomes a theory. That is science. Science will gather evidence. They put information together for us to see, to make analysis about it, if it is true or not. That's economics as a science. You get that? Is it clear there? So theories that gain universal acceptance are often called laws. So if these theories, people accept it, they gain universal, like the whole world accepts it, then they become theories, which we now use in our day-to-day activity. That is economics as a science. Then we go to, now they said economics is the science. In natural science, such as physical or chemistry, it is relatively easy to use scientific method. In physics, much of work can take place in laboratories. Observation can be made with some degree of certainty. Control groups can be established. It then becomes relatively easy to accept or refute a particular hypothesis. This is much more difficult in social sciences, such as economics, sociology, politics, and anthropology. So, economics as a science. We call economics a science if we are able to go to the laboratory to gather information, then it's for us to accept or reject it. If we accept it, if it is generally acceptable, it becomes theories. But if it is not, then we don't use it. That is economics as a science. But it is not the same, because in science, you can go to the laboratory, put 1 and 2 together, then the result will come out. Like blue litmus paper can become green. This is science. But economics as a social science is not that way, because it involves human behavior. So let's read. This is much difficult in social science. Why? In economics, it is often not possible to set up experiments in environments that enable one factor to be varied while other factors kept constant. The economist has to gather data in the ordinary everyday world where many variables are changing over any given time period. It then becomes difficult to decide whether the evidence supports or refutes particular hypothesis. Economics as a social science, it is not the same as going to the laboratory. Here, there are some variables, there are some constants. So things are not going to be the same. The environment you see today, the people in that environment today might not be the same people and the same environment tomorrow. So things continue to evolve, things continue to change. That is why it is difficult to compare economics as a science and economics as a social science. They are not the same. In science, we go to the laboratory, we get the results. But human, they are dynamic. We can't decide what they want, how they want it. Do you get it?
Yes.
So, economists sometimes come to very different conclusions when considering a particular set of data, as their interpretation may vary. For example, an unemployment rate of 6% in one area of a country compared to a national average of 3% may indicate a failure of government policy to help this area. Others may conclude that policy has been a success, as unemployment may have been far greater without the use of policy. So, economics as a social science, it deals with interpretation. Your interpretation might be different from my interpretation. They made the example of a country.
Yes.
Okay. So, in a nutshell, the point they are making is economics when it is science, it's easier than economics when it is social science. Economics as a science allows us to come up with to gather information. This information, we can test them, then we can approve it, we can accept it, we can reject it, we can refute it. That is economics as a science. Gathering information about something and for us to reject or accept. If it is generally accepted, then it becomes theory. That is economics as a science. But economics as a social science, it is difficult because it involves human being. It involves the environment. So there are some factors that are variable, there are some factors that are constant. You cannot continue to keep some factors constant for a long period of time. And you cannot always continue to keep some factors variable. So they vary. As a result of that, economics as a social science is more difficult than economics as a science. That is the point they are making. I think it's clear. Is it clear, please?
Yes, sir.
So we go to theories and models. The term theory and model are often used to mean the same thing. There is no exact distinction to be made between the two. However, an economic theory is generally expressed in looser terms than a model. For instance, consumption is dependent upon income might be an economic theory. Theories can often be expressed in words. Economic models, because they require greater precision in their specification, are often expressed in mathematical terms. So there's methods, there are theories and methods. Theories, we can say them in words, like the one they said consumption is dependent on income. What you consume will be is determined by what you earn. So it is what you have that you spend, yes or no? What you have is what you spend in terms of income, yes or no? That is what we call a theory. Here they said consumption is dependent upon income. It's a theory. But if we have to express this in model, we will say CT equals to Y. Do you understand?
Yes.
That is, we express this theory in a mathematical form, in an arithmetical form. That's the difference between theories and models. Theories are expressed in words. Models are expressed in arithmetical form. Consumption can be C. Income can be T. Can be Y. So when we express this thing in arithmetic term, we are talking about models. But if it is being expressed in words, it is theory. Do you get the difference between models and theories now? Theories are expressed in words. Models are represented in arithmetic terms. Like CT equals to YT. That is model. Instead of saying CT equals to YT, you say consumption is dependent on income. That is the difference between theory and model. Is it clear? Do you understand theories and model here?
Yes.
Theories are expressed in words. Models are expressed in arithmetic. Models are theories that are expressed in arithmetical form. Clear? Is it clear, please?
Yep.
Good. So we go to the purpose of modeling. Are you there? The purpose of modeling. Why are theories and models so useful in science? The universe is complex. There is an infinite number of interactions happening at any moment in time. Somehow, we all have to make sense of what is going on. For instance, we assume that if we put our hand into a flame, we will get burned. If we see a large hole in the ground in front of us, we assume that we will fall into it if we carry on walking in that direction. One of the reasons we construct theories or models is because we want to know why something is as it is. Some people are fascinated by questions such as, why do we fall downwards and not upwards? Or why can birds fly? More importantly, we use theories and models all the time in deciding how to act. We keep away from fires to prevent getting burned. We avoid holes in the ground because we do not want to fall. So the purpose of model and theory is to understand why things happen, why things remain the way they are. That is why we want theories and models. We question. So when you see a hole, a big hole in front of you, you understand that if you go towards that direction, you fall into the hole. These are theories and models. These are the purpose of modeling. You know that if there's a fire, you put your hand into a fire,
yes,
you get burnt. So these are reasonings. So theories and the purpose of modeling is to ask questions, to come up with why things happen. Is it clear?
Yes.
That is the purpose of modeling. Any question about the purpose of modeling?
No.
We move on. Simplification. Are you there?
Yes.
Simplification. There's one criticism made of economics is that economic theories and models are unrealistic. They are assumptions. So this is true, but it is equally true of Newton's law of gravity, Einstein's theory of relativity, or any other theory or model. This is because any theory or model has to be a simplification of reality if it is to be useful. Imagine, for instance, using a map that describes an area perfectly. To do this, it would need to be a full-scale reproduction of the graph of the map of the entire area, which will give no practical advantage. Alternatively, drop a feather and a metal ball from the top of tall building, you will find that they do not descend at the same speed, as one law in physics would predict, because the law assumes that factors such as drag effect caused by air do not exist. If a model is to be useful, it has to be simple. The extent of simplification depends on its use. So, what they are telling us about simplification is we have to simplify things. So if we have a model, models are too complex. They are too much information. They have too much branches. So to make them easier for us to understand, we need to simplify them. So if whatever assumptions we have, if whatever information we have, to be able to use those information, for those information to be useful, for those data, for those theories, for those models to be useful, they have to be simplified. You can't imagine you can have a large map. You know what map is, right? Map.
Yes.
Map.
Yes, I know.
That talks about direction and places.
Yes.
When you have a map of the world, can you find out Libya in that map? It's difficult. A very big map for the world. You need to find Libya. It will be difficult. You need to simplify it.
Yes, Africa.
To Africa.
And then you have to start finding the world.
That is what simplification is about.
Yes.
So when you have a large thing, you have to find a way to make it simple for it to be useful.
Yes.
Do you understand?
Yes.
That is the point they're making about simplification. So for models and theories to be easy and to be useful, they have to be simplified. And simplification means making them easy to understand. Is it clear?
Yes.
The next paragraph here, it says simplification implies that some factors have been included in the model and some in the last paragraph there, and some have been omitted. It could even be the case that some factors have been distorted to draw attention to particular points in a model. Like I told you, the world map is large, but we need Libya in the world. It's difficult to find Libya. So what do? We eliminate some. We eliminate until it is Africa. From Africa, we can still simplify to have North Africa, where we can find Libya.
Okay.
Or just finding Tripoli in the world. To get Tripoli in the world map is difficult. So the first thing you have to do is make a continent.
Yes.
The continent, after the continent,
find Africa.
The country. After the country,
the Tripoli.
then Tripoli. So this is what simplification is about. Is it clear?
Yes.
Any question about simplification?
No.
Good. So go to assumptions now. Assumptions and ceteris paribus. Are you there? Assumptions and ceteris paribus.
Give me a second.
Assumptions and ceteris paribus. For scientists, in all sciences, there's always assumptions when they want to develop what we call models and theories. You know what models are? Words that will come up with. Saying certain things in words. That is model. And for that is theory. And for model, it means arithmetic representation of the theory. That is what the theory is. That is what model is. So what they are simply saying is that scientists, whenever they need to make assumptions, they want it to be, whenever they want theories to be simple, to be simpler, to be understandable, they use assumptions. So I'm going to read it anyway. All scientists make assumptions when developing models and theories. In the case of the feather and the metal ball being dropped from a tall building, both would fall at equal speed if it were assumed that there was no drag effect caused by the air. Making assumptions allowed the scientists to simplify a problem to make it easier to solve. With assumptions, problems becomes easier. Like a metal and a feather of a bird. When you throw them down, they are supposed to go down at the same time. But there is assumption that the feather will be stopped in a way that would allow the metal to get down before the feather. So, do you understand? So instead of us to be like thinking, why is it so? Scientists, they come up with assumptions. They give us the reasons that this and this and these are why we have such. So instead of us to start thinking, we don't have to think anymore. We understand that, oh, with the assumption, this theory is real. So that is what assumption is about. So an important way in which economists simplify reality is to adopt the ceteris paribus. For the scientists, for economists, for them to simplify reality, they use ceteris paribus, all things being equal. So if we want to talk about demand, there are two factors in demand. We have the price and non-price factors in demand. So if we have to deal with price, all other factors that are not price will remain constant. That is ceteris paribus. They remain the same. What affects demand is not only price. There are other factors that affect demand. Yes or no?
Yes.
So either price or non-pricing factors, they both affect demand. But when we have to deal with price, we don't deal with demand, and we don't deal with non-pricing factor. And when we have to deal with non-pricing factors, we don't deal with price. So that's why the ceteris paribus thing comes in. All things being equal, we are dealing with price. All other factors that are not price remains the same. So if we have to deal with non-other factors, are you with me, please? If we have to deal with non-other factors, then price will remain the same. So we can't use price and non-price factors at the same time. Either we use price now, and we use non-other price factor later, or we use non-other pricing factor now, and we use price later date. That is what ceteris paribus is about. So for economists, whenever they want to simplify theories, they use ceteris paribus, all things being equal. So if all things are equal, then we are focused on one variable. All things being equal, we are focused on that. So there's a variable, there's a constant. There's a fixed factor, there's a variable factor. So if we have to use the fixed factor, the variable factors remains the same. If we have to talk about the variable factors, the fixed factor remains the same. That is the concept of ceteris paribus. Is it clear? So what we are saying again, I'm going to summarize. For assumptions and ceteris paribus, scientists, they use assumptions when they have to simplify models and theories. And when we talk about models, we are talking about arithmetic representation of theories. And when we talk about theories themselves, theories are information that we've gathered that became true, that is generally accepted by the universe. These are what we call theories. So assumptions, we talk about how to simplify theories. And for economists, they use ceteris paribus whenever they need to decide or they need to simplify their theory. So all things being equal, that is what ceteris paribus is. So they make the example of demand here. For demand, what they are talking about demand is that demand will change. But there are different things that changes demand. There are price factors that change. There's a price factor that changes demand, and there are non-pricing factors that can change demand, like income, like fashion and taste, like availability of substitutes, and so on. All these things will change demand. So when we are focused on pricing factor, which will contract or expand demand, we will use ceteris paribus to talk about non-pricing factors remaining the same. And when we have to talk about non-pricing factors that affect demand, that will make demand to shift to the right or to the left, all things being equal, price remains the same. So ceteris paribus meaning that all things being equal. So for fixed, when we are focused on fixed, variable factors remain the same. When you are focused on variable factors, fixed factors remains the same. That is what ceteris paribus is. Is it clear?
Yes.
Assumptions and ceteris paribus. Any question about it? Good. So we go to positive and normative economics. So we're still on economics as a social science. Now we're going to positive and normative economics. Economics is concerned with two types of investigation: the positive economics and the positive economics and the normative economics. This is what economics is concerned with when there is investigation. So what is positive economics? Positive economics is a scientific study of the subject. It is concerned with finding out how economies and market actually work. For positive economics, we're talking about the market itself. What happens in the market? What are the operations? How are the markets operational? What do they do in that market? What do they do in that industry? That is positive economics. But for positive statements, these are statements about economics that can be proven to be true or false. So for positive economics, which talked about how the market, finding out how the market actually works, gives us positive statements. And for positive statement, we're talking about statements that can be proven to be true or false. Oh, consumption is dependent on income. Is it true or false? That's a positive statement. Because it is only when what you have you can spend. If you don't have income, you cannot consume. It is a reality. Yes or no? So that is what positive statement is about. Do you get the point or not? We have positive economics, which talks about for positive economics, it's an objective study of economics itself. That is positive economics. And what does this concern? It concerns how to find out the nature, the behavior of the market, how the market actually works. That is what positive economics is. Do you get what positive economics is? Positive economics studies economics itself. And economics is a social science which studies human behavior in relationship between ends and scarce means that have alternative uses. So if there's positive economics, it's simply talking about how to understand the market situation, the marketplace. What happens with consumers? What happens with producers? That is how the market works. That is positive economics. So for positive economics, we have what we call the positive statement. And what's a positive statement? A positive statement is a statement that has to be proven to be true or false. So it's a positive statement because it can be accepted to be true and at the same time become false. It can be accepted or refuted. That's why I call it positive statements. They made the example, they said the Japanese economy is currently operating on its production possibility frontier. It's a positive statement. Economists can search for evidence to whether there is an unemployed resources or not. They made the example of a positive statement here, using Japan as an example. They said, oh, the Japan economy is operating on its production possibility frontier, on its boundary. So this is a statement by economists. But this statement we can confirm if it is true or not. That's why we call it a positive statement. A positive statement is a statement that can be confirmed to be true or confirmed to be false. Because there's going to be evidence for it. Do you understand what positive statement is? There's positive economics, which talks about finding out how the market works. From there we have the positive statement. And for positive statement, we're talking about statements that can be, with evidence, can become true or false. Clear?
Yes.
Then we have normative economics. For normative economics, it is concerned with value judgments. This is about opinion. That's normative economics. It's about opinion. So I read. Normative economics is concerned with value judgment. It deals with the study of and the presentation of policy prescriptions about economics. Positive economics is talking about how the market works. But normative economics talks about how to prescribe information, to suggest based on views on how the market should work. Positive economics is talking about finding out how the market works. That is positive economics. Then there's a positive statement, which are statements that can be proven to be true or false. But for normative economics is talking about how we come up with policies, how we come up with rules, how we prescribe things to be able to have the market work. That is normative economics. So it deals with the study of and the presentation of policy. So they use policy to understudy the market. That is normative economics. So we have the normative statement. And what is normative statements? These are statements that cannot be supported or refuted. Ultimately, they are viewpoints of how economies and markets should work. So for normative statement, these are statements that cannot be supported or refuted because it's about how things should happen.
Okay.
Do you understand? It's not the same as you finding evidence. With evidence, you can say yes or no. That is positive economics and positive statement. But for normative statement, you cannot say yes, you cannot say no, because they are backed with policy. They are backed with what? Policy. They make the example, they said, for example, the government should increase the state pension or manufacturing companies should invest more. These are normative statements because it involves should. The government should. There's no evidence for that. Do you understand? So they are backed with policy. These are normative statements. they cannot be supported or opposed because there's no evidence for that. They are based on policy policy to control the economy. These are normative statements. Is it clear?
Mm-hmm.
So they said economists tend to be interested in both positive and normative economics. They want to find out how economies work, but they also want to influence policy debates. Normative economics are also typically contain positive economics within it. Take normative statement: the government should increase the state pension. Economists putting forward these value judgments are likely to back up their opinion with positive evidence. They might state that the average pensioner has a disposable income of 40%. So most of the time, for economists, they need both positive and normative economics. They need both. They need both positive and normative statements. Because if positive statement is about finding out how the market works, now that you know how the market wants to work, you need policy to back it up to make sure that it can become consistent. Oh, this is how Mohammed should do. This is how you should do. But what will make you continue to do this way? You need a policy, you need a guideline. So that is why economics will not be complete without both positive and normative. Do you get it? So we need both positive and normative statements. We need both positive economic and negative or normative economic to make the economy work. Any question about it?
No.
So that ends economics as a social science.